Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever said to themselves, I'm ready for more responsibility, more recognition, more compensation. But maybe that thought of asking for a promotion or a raise makes your stomach turn because, frankly, we don't want to come across as pushy, or we don't want to hear the word no, or maybe we just don't know where to start. And so today's episode is for all of us and how we reframe how we ask for a raise or a promotion, sometimes it's both, and how to take fear out of the equation. Because when you ask from a place of strategy, clarity, and self-worth, you're not just advocating for yourself, you're showing up for yourself. Today's episode, we're gonna dive deep into first, how do we reframe this idea of asking for a raise and or promotion? And secondly, I'm gonna go deep into a couple of specific scenarios and give you the superpowers and tips you need to win in those situations. So first, let's talk about the reframe. I don't know if you're anything like me, I'm super conflict avoidant, and things like this are always hard. I hate asking for things, and I hate asking for them when it comes to myself or when it comes to money. And I wanted to share with you a couple of ways to reframe how you think about asking for a raise or promotion. The first is, I think of it as a starting point around where you stand with your boss or your organization. The word no is okay to hear when you make that ask, because you use that as an opening moment, as a door to a conversation around, hey, so what would it take for me to get a promotion, or what would have to be true? Because sometimes we just need to know what's possible, what's not possible, and what we have to do and others have to do around us. So I think of asking and starting this conversation as a way to know where you stand and getting the information you need so that you can progress. The second thing is, this is an important leadership opportunity for you to let your boss know, or whoever the decision maker knows, hey, I'm all in. I love where I am. I love the vision of where we're headed. I love the outcomes we're driving towards. To get the best out of me, I want to make sure that I'm rewarded for stepping up and showing up for us to get to the best outcome. Sometimes we think of it as two parties on different sides of a negotiating table. What I like to do is I like to flip the script and reframe it as it's not a negotiation between two parties. In fact, we're on the same side of the table working towards the best outcome. And when I feel recognized, appreciated, rewarded, you're gonna get the best out of me. And I think that's an important way to think about it. And the third reframe is, this is an opportunity for you to get developed. One of the things I say is, you shouldn't wait until it's too late to figure out when you can get a promotion or a raise. It should be an ongoing dialogue about your learning and development journey. If you have an annual review practice, I think that's a moment where you're not just receiving the review and seeing what the results were and where you're gonna land on a bonus standpoint or what the company thinks of you. I think that's an important point in the conversation to say, I would really like to progress in the next year. I'd love it to make it to director or manager or VP. Can we have a conversation around what skills I need to develop, what you need to see more of from me, what things I need to be developing and improving on, because I would like to know what it will take to get to that next level in my journey. I think sometimes we're too afraid in those moments to have that open dialogue and to check in with our leader, our boss, the decision maker on a regular basis. But personally, I like to know, what are the 3 things you want from me this year? Because do I need to get a coach? Do I need to invest in additional time to get that done? Do I need opportunities to stretch myself? And that may also allow you to seek opportunities where you say, okay, this is a moment for me to step out and shine. So those reframes take away the fear and anxiety from getting that raise or getting that promotion, because we're not just asking for it, we want to get it. And I think if you reframe it in those ideas, it's not a no, it's a starting point to know where I stand. This is an opportunity for me to make it clear that I'm on the team and I want to do my best work and we're on the same side of the table, and be clear with me around what I need to do to be able to get there. And that knowledge is incredibly powerful. We're going to talk about coupling that with some additional homework. But that's an important reframe is it's not a no, it's a starting point for the conversation to happen. Now let's talk about some specific scenarios. I want to really explore 3 different types of scenarios. One is sometimes we want a title change or more leadership or more accountability, and that promotion doesn't necessarily have money attached to it. So the first scenario is I want a promotion, whether it's a title change or more responsibility, but there's no expectation of a salary increase. The second one is where you're in the same job and you want to ask for more money. And the third is when there's a promotion and money attached, which is oftentimes the thing we most want, but there is a ladder to getting this done. In doing this, if you think about it in these 3 different scenarios, you can kind of place where you are and think about the superpowers and skills you want to develop. So let's start with a promotion with no money involved, right? You just want a title change or more accountability or leadership. This specific scenario is starting with what I think of as the achieving superpower. So in our 8 superpowers, there is the achieving superpower. And an achiever is really about what I think of as data mode, like collecting your accomplishments. What have you delivered? What have you launched? What have you streamlined? And you gather all your wins and successes, almost like a data set. And you want to keep a running list of all your accomplishments throughout the year, emails from clients, metrics, team feedback, so that you have a case for the conversation. My dear friend Meggie Palmer has a great app. It's called Pep Talk Her. And it's really almost like a notepad where you can just jot down wins throughout the year. And I love cataloging this. Mika Brzezinski in her book, Know Your Value, which I love that book, she says, make a list of everything you do, how much time it takes, and what value it brings to the company. Research what people in your position at other companies are doing and really understand the value you bring to the table. I think this achieving superpower is really critical when we're going to ask for that promotion because we have the data set to back it up. It is even better when we've already had the conversation with our boss that has said, hey, what things do you want me to prove this year to be able to get more accountability and responsibility? The second superpower you want to use is leading. And this is where you can advocate and show that you're leading your own career. So you can make a case for this promotion. Also, this often goes hand in hand with the performing superpower, which is all about extroversion and selling the merits of your promotion. One of the things I love is if you've been practicing public speaking in other venues, this is a much easier conversation to have because you know how to frame the story. So here's an example around how you can tie achieving your accomplishments to bigger goals. Hey, I've taken on leadership of our onboarding process, which has decreased ramp up time for new hires by 30%. I'd love to formalize that work as part of a larger role focused on team development. So the combination of knowing your accomplishments and their impact, how they tie to the broader company goals from a leading standpoint, and then from a performing standpoint, being able to say it crisply and clearly. I think it's also important under the performing superpower that we don't use any words that diminish the effect of the impact. So instead of, I think I've been doing a good job, it's over the past year, I have done X, Y, and Z. I'm proud of this momentum we've built. I'm ready to grow it into the next level of impact. And then the last superpower you want to use if you're asking for more responsibility, a title change, is the creating superpower. This is where you can see opportunities and envision possibilities. When you leverage the creating superpower, you're able to ask in light of a vision of the future. You can leap without the net. Sometimes you're asking for something that doesn't exist yet. In fact, you want to create that role. And that's okay. You see a path where others see risk. You might say, hey, there's a gap I've noticed in how we manage the relationships with our vendors and partners. I'd love to pilot a role that focuses on the experience strategy for our partners. It's something I'm passionate about, I think will make a huge difference and doesn't exist yet in the company. You want to use these superpowers because what you're doing when you're asking for a title change or more responsibility is you're mapping out specifically what you believe is possible. And again, because you've built that homework, that legwork with your leader, you are able to have that trust and rapport where they'll help you see how this fits on your development path. I want to read you a story from my book, and it's about a woman named Monica. And I think it's very relevant for this. Well, let's first off start by saying sometimes we have these superpowers in other parts of our lives. This is a woman who, when I asked her, I said, if someone was bullying your kid at school, what would you do? And she said, oh my gosh, I would walk into the principal's office and I would mama bear that moment. And I said, well, let's transfer that feeling over to mama bearing your own career. You're already doing it in other places. You already have leading and performing skills in other places that we can bring to the table. And so I want to read you this story about Monica. Monica had the pay she deserved, but didn't get the title. And so people continued to take credit for her work, speak over her in meetings, and dismiss her contributions. She had all this responsibility, but not the acknowledgement and respect she deserved. She was fed up, feeling like she was always hesitating to speak up, and that if she did, it came across as petty in reference to her male colleagues. I coached her to tell her boss simply and directly that she needed a title change without needing to gather streams of data to prove her worth. It wasn't a negotiation, but it was self-advocacy. She and her boss were on the same side because her feeling recognized and valued could only make her an even better colleague. When she went in and talked to her boss, this is what she said. By the way, this is verbatim because she actually recounted to me in a text message. She said, "It is important that my title reflects the accountability I've taken and how others view my role. This is something that's important to me, something I've earned, and it's commensurate with the value I bring every day." I will tell you, and she was so happy because I ended up seeing her a few weeks later. She said her boss immediately called HR, requested the title change, and let her know he saw her potential beyond the title promotion. When we debriefed, her first reaction was, "What took me so long? And why was I so worked up before the conversation?" She learned the power of knowing her value and that she had the ability to advocate for it. She realized that in the past, she had worked herself up with anxiety over those conversations because she doubted herself and the outcome. I encouraged her to remember this moment the next time she needed to have a difficult conversation, to not waste the precious resource of energy imagining the worst case scenario, and to believe in her own abilities. Being fed up can be a powerful motivator to make the choice towards self-confidence. So if you're looking for a promotion that doesn't involve a salary change, this should be a conversation you can have from a place of achieving, leading, performing, and creating. You already have a set of accomplishments. And if they've proven out over what your boss has asked you to do, and they help you be a better colleague to others, and you can make the case for how it makes the company better, it is a straightforward conversation. You don't have to overthink or apologize or use any qualifier language to get that result. Now let's talk about the second one, when we're asking for a raise in the same position. This is where you have to do the homework. And I always tell people, without the homework, you don't know if you're in a good place. And so the two superpowers I always encourage people to use are self-sustaining and leading. Self-sustaining is, I know my value, I know my market worth, and I absolutely can defend that this is my market value. Someone will pay me this market value. And leading, which is taking charge and advocating. The reason self-sustaining is so important is because if you can benchmark your market value, you know that you're speaking from a place of authority. There are a couple examples I want to use. Vicky Nguyen, in her book, Boat Baby, she's the NBC News anchor and Today Show correspondent. She said she started just asking people, hey, when you were in my job, what did you get paid? Or if you're comfortable sharing with me, I'd love to know what you're getting paid or what I should ask for. And I think it's important to have that as a grounding data set because in some instances, we realize we're making less than others in the same exact job. The other thing is sometimes it's helpful to have a competitive offer or to go online. It can be Glassdoor, it can be any sort of research and just see what the salary tiers are. A lot of it is publicly available. I want to share with you two examples. A woman had just graduated from business school and she reached out to me and she had 2 offers from tech companies. One was a very attractive offer, but she wasn't necessarily sold on the company. And the other one was a company she really wanted to work for, but the offer came in below market value or below the value of what the other company was willing to give her. And she said, I don't know, I'm just out of business school. I'm fresh out of business school. I have no ability to ask. And I said, look, the worst thing they'll say is no, and you still might take the job, but you want to know what culture you're walking into. And when you have the job offer is when you have the most leverage. They've already said they want you. And so I said, why don't you take the competitive offer? You can decide whether or not you want to tell them which company it's with and just say, hey, I really want to work with you all. If you could at least match this offer, it would make a huge difference. Within 48 hours, she had a matching offer. The company was able to raise her salary a bit, but more importantly, give her stock options that equaled the value of the other companies. That was a great example where she thought she had no power, but in fact, she had the data to show it. Another example is a very good friend in a senior position. She was not looking to leave that company, and she had been reached out to by a headhunter, a recruiter, who said, hey, I just want you to go through the process. This company really loves you. And she went through the process and they made her an incredibly generous offer. It was far exceeding what she was getting at the last place in terms of cash, bonus, not necessarily on stock and equity. But she said, wow, they really outdid themselves. But I feel reluctant to leave. I feel pretty loyal to where I am. And I said, go to your boss and say, I've got this other offer. I want to see what you can do. And he said, give us a week. They came back and the offer they gave her did not match the one she was given from the other company. And she said, look, I really don't want to have any bad blood, but I can't turn this other opportunity down. And when she called me, I said, well, now you know where you stand with the company you're at. You actually know what they can do. And she said, but they're giving me the most generous offer they've given anyone in the business development team. This is the max what they can do. And I said, do you believe the other company has potential? Do you believe that you can do even more in the world? And she said, yes. I said, then you have to take the competitive offer. She did. And a few months later, she bumped into her old boss and the CEO of the company she had left at an industry event. She had stayed in the same industry. And it was interesting because they said, oh, how are you doing? She goes, I love the new company. Obviously, I miss you all. And one of their board members came over and said, I understand that we could not match what they offered you, and it was our loss. She's on good terms with everyone, but I'm really proud that she channeled the self-sustaining superpower to know her market value, advocate for it, and really see her own potential beyond what the current company could offer her. Let's talk about when you are combining asking for a promotion and a raise. I think this is where you bring all of those superpowers to bear: leading, performing, achieving, self-sustaining, and creating. I think when you add in, by the way, that self-sustaining superpower, the money doesn't become an issue because you know your market value and worth. The self-sustaining quality grounds you in the mindset that you are worthy of the raise. If you have done all the homework to prove it out, you don't have to over-explain or justify every detail of it. It's a mindset shift. This is not about being liked, this is about being valued. And I love the Barbara Houston quote, asking for more is an act of self-love. Saying no is a show of self-respect. Refusing to settle is a statement of self-worth. And walking away is a sign of self-trust. I do have to say, you have to be comfortable hearing no and walking away. And that is where we started off with a reframe. You know your market value and your worth. And so you know someone will pay that. And that's when you've conflated these two things around asking for a raise and a promotion. It's important that you have other options where you can walk away and you say, look, that company wasn't able to give me what I needed. I can be happier elsewhere. But if, for example, you want to lead the conversation and you like where you are, you just want to know the pathway, then I think it's turning the conversation around and saying, hey, I'm not waiting for anyone to acknowledge or open the door for me. Because I think too often we are good citizens. We stay in the same places and we're just like, someone will recognize me someday and make me that promotion officer. Let's be clear. Everyone's consumed with their own things. And so you're able to take charge and lead that conversation and say, hey, if not now, if we can't get that promotion and that raise down, obviously I love working here. Based on the scope of work I'm doing, based on the market data, when do you think that would be possible? And what has to be true about the company's trajectory, about movements across the team? I would like to make sure that when that next job opens up, I'm one of the first candidates considered. I also had someone at a pharmaceuticals company said, every 6 to 12 months, they look at the job posting boards because there might be a director job in a different division, or there might be a step-up role that they want to hire internally. And they're always looking for those opportunities internally to say, I want to make sure my hat is in the ring when that job opening comes up. Is if you are always asking around, hey, what needs to happen for me to prove this? Or what do I need to do to make sure I'm considered for that role? Then you know that you're capable and worth it, and you're not waiting to receive it. You're not waiting for that year-end review or that conversation. It's a constant focus on your own learning and development and trajectory. Here's what I want to close out with today. Promotions aren't given, they're earned, and you want to ask for that recognition. Raises aren't awkward if you root them in your market value and your worth. And your superpowers can become strategic tools. And if you've learned anything from today, leading, self-sustaining, performing, the ones that happen in the lowest frequency in our data set, the ones that are really ones that open us up to embarrassment and shame and disappointment and setback, those are the ones you want to cultivate and build out more strongly. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just need to have these superpowers at the table when you're having these conversations. And if you've established them in your own self-worth, if you know your own value, then you're comfortable getting the feedback around what you need to prove or do to reach your potential. You can absolutely sit at the table. And by the way, it's even better when you've built up that rapport with your boss that you're sitting on the same side of the table. You can ask the questions because it's in the service of the company's best interests, your own journey, your own outcomes, and you can own your next step. I hope you've loved this episode of In Confidence and you're leaving this space with some tools a bit stronger than when you entered it. If you love this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, maybe someone who's going through this conversation on a raise or a promotion, and subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Until next time, in the words of my 9-year-old self, and these words could not be any truer in light of the conversation that we had today, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.